What if I told you the next Democratic nominee could hand Republicans their biggest electoral landslide in 40 years? That's not a hot take. That's what the numbers are actually showing right now, and once you see the map, you'll understand exactly why. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez has climbed into the top tier of the 2028 Democratic primary race. She's swapping third and fourth place with Pete Buttigieg in the polling averages. And on the betting markets, she's sitting right there with the other frontrunners, essentially neck and neck for the nomination. On the other side, J.D. Vance is dominating the Republican field. He's the sitting vice president, he's got a commanding lead in GOP primary polling, and the markets currently give him roughly a 42% chance of becoming the nominee. So I decided to ask an AI model to actually build out the full 50-state electoral map for a Vance versus AOC matchup in 2028. And what it spit back at me is one of the most lopsided projections I've seen for a modern presidential race. Let's start from the top, because the scale of this thing matters more than any single state. When you add up every projection, Vance ends up with 327 electoral votes. AOC is left with 211. For context, that's worse than what Michael Dukakis pulled off against George H.W. Bush back in 1988. We are talking about a potential Democratic collapse of historic proportions, and it all traces back to one simple idea. AOC might be the single worst possible matchup Democrats could put up against the current Republican Party. By the way, please leave your questions or comments in the comments section. I will answer each one individually as time permits. Also, I would be very happy if you liked the video and subscribe to my channel. Now, let's continue. Here's why the top line number gets so ugly so fast. Just looking at the safe states, the ones where a candidate wins by more than 15 points, Vance is already sitting at 212 electoral votes before we even touch a single swing state. That includes the entire reliable Republican core: Utah, Wyoming, Idaho, Montana, both Dakotas, Kansas, Oklahoma, Missouri, Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Tennessee, Kentucky, West Virginia, Indiana, South Carolina, and almost all of Nebraska. But it also includes 3 states that used to be genuine battlegrounds and simply aren't anymore under this matchup. Ohio, Vance's home state, has drifted so far right that his projected margin clears 15 points, a state Trump only won by 8 in 2016. Florida goes solid red for the first time since 1988. A stunning shift for a state that was decided by barely 1 point as recently as 2016. And Texas, which Republicans haven't dominated since Mitt Romney in 2012, is projected to finally break past that 15-point threshold too. Throw in Alaska and you've got a Republican floor of 212 votes before the map even gets interesting. Now flip it around. AOC's safe states total just 86 electoral votes. California, Hawaii, Vermont, the 1st District of Maine, Massachusetts, Maryland, and Washington, D.C. That's it. That's the entire rock-solid Democratic base under this scenario. Compare that to Vance's 212, and you start to see the shape of the problem. This isn't a close election that swings on a handful of states. This is a structural mismatch before a single vote in the actual battlegrounds gets cast. The likely category, races decided by 5 to 15 points, doesn't rescue Democrats either. AOC does pick up Washington, Oregon, Colorado, Illinois, and New York here, along with Rhode Island, Connecticut, New Jersey, and Delaware. That pushes her up to 91. But notice something. New York, her own home state, is only likely. Blue, not safe, because Kamala Harris only carried it by 12 points in 2024, roughly half the margin Hillary Clinton posted back in 2016. Same story in Illinois, where Biden's 17-point win in 2020 shrank to 11 under Harris. These are supposed to be Democratic fortresses, and they're already cracking. Meanwhile, Vance is racking up his own likely states. Iowa, once one of the purplest states in the country and an Obama win in 2012, has swung so hard right that it's now a comfortable Vance state. North Carolina, the only one of the 7 major 2024 battlegrounds that Trump carried all 3 times he ran, keeps drifting further Republican, with Vance projected to win by more than 5 points this time. The 2nd District of Maine goes red again, as it has in every election since 2016. And then there's Arizona, a state Biden flipped by a mere 0.3 point in 2020, the first Democrat to win it since Bill Clinton in 1996. That razor-thin blue window is already closed. Harris lost it by 5.5 points in 2024, and Vance is projected to build on that. Add it all up, and before we even get to the true toss-up states, Vance sits at 246 electoral votes. AOC is at 91. Just 10 states remain, and that's where this election, in theory, would actually be decided. Zoom out for a second and think about what this really means for the Democratic Party's future. In the lean category, margins of 1 to 5 points, AOC does manage to hold New Mexico, Maine's at-large electoral votes, and Virginia, despite Virginia's rightward lurch since Republican Glenn Youngkin's surprise 2021 governor's race win. But on the Republican side, Vance is projected to flip Nevada, a state that's only voted red once in the last 20 years and only just turned that corner in 2024. He's also favored in Georgia, a state Biden won by 0.2 of a point in 2020 before Trump reclaimed it in 2024. Both of those are must-win Democratic states in almost any other scenario. And under this matchup, they're already leaning the other direction. Then there's the big one. The so-called Blue Wall, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania, states that voted together in every single presidential election going back to 1992, through Clinton, through Gore, through Kerry, through Obama's dominant wins, through Trump's shocking 2016 breakthrough, through Biden's narrow 2020 recovery, and through Trump's 2024 sweep. This entire region has been trending rightward for 2 decades, and the model gives Vance a clean sweep of all three. That, combined with a projected flip of Nebraska's 2nd district, a seat Harris actually won in 2024, is enough on its own to push Vance past the 270 votes needed to win the presidency. And then you've got the true nail-biters, Minnesota and New Hampshire, both projected as tilt races with margins under 1 point. Minnesota hasn't gone Republican since Richard Nixon in 1972, the longest Democratic streak of any state in the country. But Trump only lost it by 1.5 points in 2016, and Harris's 2024 win of just over 4 points came with the state's own governor as her running mate. Even that home field advantage might not be enough to save it next time. New Hampshire tells a similar story, one of the closest states in the country in both 2016 and 2024, and now projected to flip red for the first time since 2000. So step back and look at the whole board. This isn't really a story about one candidate underperforming in one region. It's a story about what happens when a party nominates someone who energizes a loyal base but can't hold the center. Every single crack in the Democratic coalition, the Blue Wall, Arizona, Georgia, Nevada, even parts of New York and Illinois, gets exploited at once. That's how you get from a competitive modern electoral map to a 327 to 211 blowout. Whether or not this exact scenario ever plays out is a different question entirely, but the underlying warning for Democrats is hard to ignore. Nominating your most energizing primary candidate and nominating your most electable general election candidate are not always the same decision. And this map is a pretty stark illustration of what happens when a party picks the former over the latter. Think about the Blue Wall states specifically for a moment, because their history tells you everything about how fast a safe region can stop being safe. Back in 1992, Bill Clinton carried Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania comfortably, and Democrats kept winning all three for the next 2 decades straight, through Gore in 2000, through Kerry in 2004, through Obama's blowout wins in 2008 and 2012. Then in 2016, the floor fell out. Trump swept all three by margins so thin they barely registered, the first time a Republican had run the table there since Ronald Reagan in 1984. Biden clawed them back in 2020, but only barely, and by 2024, Trump had taken all three again. 20 years ago, this was the most reliable region in the entire Democratic coalition. Today, it's a full Republican sweep in this model, and that single shift alone is doing an enormous amount of work in Vance's 327 electoral vote total. That's really the story hiding underneath all these individual state numbers. It's not one bad poll or one weak swing state. It's an entire multi-decade realignment finally catching up to a party that nominated a candidate built for a primary electorate, not a general election one. And if you're a Democratic voter watching this unfold, that's the number that should actually worry you. Not who wins Iowa or Ohio, but how much of what used to be the core of the coalition is no longer guaranteed at all.